Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello everyone, once again, welcome to the Simulationist podcast. This is iteration 49. Today is the 11th of August, 2013. I am Josh Trelevin. With me on the other side of the table as always,
Ryan Kirkby.
Hey Ryan, how's it going this week?
It's going pretty good. I've been doing a lot of stuff, but how about you?
Oh, lots of stuff too. The video games, I've been coding, doing my little modifications for Minecraft.
That's right, you showed me one of them just before we started here.
Yeah, I guess, it's a little embarrassing because it's kind of a gross block, but I decided to turn the rotting flesh that you get off the zombies into something that you can make into a block and build structures out of.
See, but what I like about that is as you showed me, if they're not at proper conditions, they will degrade into soil.
That's right.
So what you've effectively come up with is a way to create like a mulch pile whereby you can convert the rotten meats into proper soil, which otherwise is technically per unit area a finite amount.
That's true. And I sort of had in the back of my mind, well, I guess in the middle of my mind or wherever things are, that's not the front, just behind the front of my mind, is there's a map out there called Skyblock, which has been out there for a while for Minecraft. It's just maybe 24 blocks in an otherwise completely void, empty map.
Ooh.
And it's got basically everything. Basically everything you need to get a world started. It's got a bit of lava and a bit of water, so you can make a cobblestone generator. It's got a sapling in there, and so much dirt. But I was thinking it'd be cool because zombies will spawn on platforms, basically, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be cool if the zombies, if you could turn their rotting flesh into more dirt and get more area that way.
I kind of like the concept of that, because the zombies come after you saying, "We need your flesh for our hunger," and you're like, "I need your flesh for my soil."
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's like, the monster you fight is no match to the monster within me.
Right. And you turn their bodies into trees and grass and wheat and flowers and
So you're a force of life via destruction of the undead. I like it.
Yep, exactly. I finished Game of Thrones, the first book. I read the book.
Congratulations.
I'm still working on the first series of the TV show. I don't know if I'm actually going to start on the second book. I haven't decided yet.
They're pretty dense tomes.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's an investment. There's other things to read. There's video games to play, and there's all of that stuff. So I don't know how far I'm going to... I'll probably just get it and read a chapter here and there. So.
Well, you can figure it out like this. The more you experience for everything, the more of a dilettante you are. You've got the breadth of the knowledge of the whole fiction and nerdity. But if you really focus it through to the end, you have the depth. And that works as a nice underpinning to keep you solidified as you go about learning from other things.
That's true. And I suppose that's a problem that we geeks and nerds definitely have, in that there's so much stuff to consume.
What do you sample from the buffet, and which trays do you clean out entirely?
Yeah.
For instance, before I started the Wheel of Time series, I didn't know how many references they just slipped in D&D.
Oh yeah.
The Dark One's Own Luck is an ability that the Warlocks have. That's something that's frequently mentioned in the Wheel of Time series. If you got luck, you keep throwing all sixes for dice when you're gambling, you have the Dark One's Own Luck is the saying they use for it. And it's something they managed to slip into D&D. I wouldn't have known it if I didn't delve in and get the depth of knowledge.
Well, that's cool.
So, yeah, I like to think there's added benefits for following through the further and further into a series.
Yeah, that's good. I think that covers my week, basically. Yeah. How about yours?
Oh, I've had an interesting week. On the one hand, in Minecraft, I'm unhappy with what I've been doing. I've been trying to work with the one big mushroom hill I've got. It's right now working about a 45-degree natural slant.
Okay,
and
so it's like a cone, like an inverted cone?
It's just your standard style hill, really.
Okay.
And I'm so used to the vertical, high up stuff to work with, I'm not really certain what to do with this hill. It puzzles me. I'm not quite certain as to how to progress from there. And I'm trying to build like a tier style. I was figuring, okay, what if I make it like, like what you see down in South America that they used to do with those Aztecs, and they had the nice, the tiered farming area. And I put that up, and it just doesn't look right to me. It's not, as grand as everything else I'm trying to work with.
So it doesn't look grand enough?
It doesn't look as awesome as I wanted to. Like, I'm trying to make sure things are great. My bridge is a wonderful bridge. My circular, actual green grass area offside of my Mushroom Island is like as circular as you can get. It's looking awesome. I'm finally able to get the decent jungle trees to grow up, and I'm having all sorts of fun with that.
Cool.
And it's meeting sustainability for the amount of treelings I'm getting out of it. So it's actually progressing. I'm happy there. Yeah. My staircase is a great thing. It's grand. It's wonderful, and I'm starting to carve my way out and actually build like a spot for me to just relax in. That's going good. But this hill, this large hill that is effectively the middle of my chain of Mushroom Islands. I've got some stuff I want to do on the other islands, and when I get to the far end, I'm going to build a nice long bridge to the mainland so I can bring over animals and have some fun there.
Yeah.
But until I can get to those places, I don't have anything else to do except work on this big hill. And it seems like not a lot of people focus on the hills, because I can Google up Minecraft house.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this house. Okay, I see what they did there. That's a nice style, nice way to break up the pattern. That works nice. I can like Google up, towers, bridges. I can Google up, artificial islands, and they show all these wonderful designs and sets, and it's like, ooh, this is great stuff. Minecraft Hill does not return a lot of results. There's no real inspiration for me to dig into. Mm-hmm. So I'm at a temporary loss of what the heck am I going to do now? So.
Yeah, and you want to build it into the hill because you're doing that terrace thing. Because I've seen people do buildings that are sort of almost hang off of hills, and there's maybe like a pillar holding up one part of it.
And that's not bad, I suppose, but it's not. I've already got a nice spot for all my housing. I've got the one tall area I'm going to build my wonderful housing of, and I'm going to put up all sorts of wonderful things there. Mm-hmm. But this hill, I mean, should I make it more terraced so I get higher walls so it has more of a stylized design along with the rest of my Mushroom Islands? Mm. Should I, just flatten it entirely and just have like a nice flat area? I don't want to waste a hill because that seems like a waste.
That's true. It would be a waste. Have you ever done like overlapping farms, like?
Well, that's one of my.
Way you could fit more farms in there.
Well, that's my one plan I was just going to do is once I get the terraced areas in, I'd start digging into it, and then I'd have effectively vertical farming. Because I'm big on vertical farming in the real world. I like it. I think it's a solid concept. More people should look into and follow with all their hearts.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
If nothing else, it takes up less, like land space and works well for cities. But this hill is a mountain to me because it's just so hard to overcome.
Yeah, but you're
ironically, I would have had an easier time with a mountain. But I'm working on it. I've got some ideas. Maybe make it more terraced. Maybe I should just say, okay, I'm trimming out the fat around the edges, and then I'm just going to make it stacked up all high. It's going to be like a big office tower building, but with cows inside.
Yeah. Have you kept a lot of the mycelium?
Yes. Right now I've got on the proper Mushroom Islands just the mycelium style going on.
Okay, yeah. So it's still
But what I
like
might do, if it's going to be all farming land, is make it so that at the top I get rid of the mycelium, put in a green base, and then just have a tree farm up at the top.
Oh, tree farm on top, yep.
Make for a nice break of style, if nothing else. At least that's my thought at the current time. If it doesn't work, I'll just get rid of the grass, put mycelium back in, and I'll put up some trees, from the giant mushrooms and say, hey, it's a mushroom farm now.
Oh, that sounds fun, though, too.
If nothing else, it's just style. I mean, I can grow regular mushrooms around them and just say, oh yeah, these are for when I really get hungry.
Oh, have you experimented with, like, making structures out of the mushrooms?
Not too much on that at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something I'm going to work on, definitely. I'm going to have some fun with. Maybe get a nice speckled wall up around them instead of soil and proper stone once I get enough base materials in there.
Yeah. Well, and it should be relatively easy to get giant mushrooms because it just costs a little mushroom and some bone meal.
And now that I've got a nice, bridge to a place where skeletons will spawn,
Yeah.
I can get that.
Yeah, now you can get the bone meal, yeah.
So that's my biggest obstacle this week. I've just really had a hard time figuring out what do I do with this hill, because it seems like the entire community doesn't do a lot with hills. They go someplace more dynamic for like, oh, I've got a floating island, or I just made a huge pit. Honestly, a huge pit might not be that bad an idea. But I want to do something that looks awesome. I want to do something that really, like, if someone else was to see it, go, wow, that's kind of groovy how you did that.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sounds like you're on your way, though. It sounds like you're just not
Well,
there
I
yet.
know it's not good enough, so I am going to do better. I prefer some more inspiration. So.
Okay, yeah.
But if no one else in the gaming community for Minecraft is doing it, I might have to just blaze a trail.
Yeah, well, you can always post screenshots or even like do a little short video or something like that and put it out there and see what people say.
Or I could just dig down deep enough, get myself some lava, and then just toss lava flows all over there and say it's the uninhabitable part of the island. I tried. Can't do anything with it. Just burn everything. Done.
Very good.
But other than that, I've been doing some interesting reading this week.
Oh, yeah?
GURPS. The Grand Unified Role-Playing System. I'm not big on the system itself. Something about a system that you can accidentally pronounce by belching, it has negative points for me.
Right.
I do like a concept of a point-based system. That said, I prefer my tri-stat system. I know it a little bit better. It works a little bit more around what I want as opposed to here's a bunch of rules, and if you want rules for something else kind of like it, you still have to go into another book and delve into that.
Yeah, GURPS has a lot of material.
GURPS has a lot of material. They've got a lot of good material, though. Like I have heavily recommended their Illuminati book in the past. It's a good read.
Yeah.
But I've been reading about their alternate worlds stuff this week, and I've had a lot of fun with that. Just reading it. I like the fluff. They've produced very good fluff. Even if I never use it for a campaign, it's a good read.
Okay, yeah, GURPS Alternate Worlds, and that's like just alternate history and stuff like that?
It's basically, they invent, they call it parachronics, a way to go to another timeline.
Oh, very good.
And so from that, they effectively just work with the idea, like, what happens if this thing changes? Like, what if, something had happened and now the Confederacy wins over the Union in the American Civil War?
Okay, yeah. Well, you see that in a lot of fiction and stuff. So.
Yeah. What if, the Nazis had won in Germany, managed to keep most of the land instead of losing it all because they bungled it up badly?
Okay. Well, that would be a lousy future, but.
So that's the thing, is they have some situations whereby the situation would start off what you imagine as lousy, but it winds up progressing to a point. Like they had, they call it the worlds whereby the South secedes from the North successfully. You would expect there to be slavery, and in the standard world of Dixie that they have there, it's still perfectly legal in 9 out of the 21 Confederate states.
Okay.
But they have other ones whereby what happens is eventually the South realizes slavery is not a good idea, and so they wind up abolishing it anyways, and it becomes just another sort of nation that no longer deals with slavery like pretty much the rest of the civilized world. And they wind up, and so it winds up teaching the lessons that that even though you would imagine this as being bad, it can still eventually, over the course of generations, turn itself back into good.
Mm-hmm.
Fun things like that. And then there are just some more out there worlds. Christian Japan, and weird stuff where the entire world winds up going effectively communist, except for China, which winds up being capitalist. Although they wind up having a horrible war, and the entire place is now dying. The entire world is dying, and what they call it the homeland, the timeline, is actually evacuating people out as they can into other worlds and back into integration into their own timeline, as that world becomes uninhabitable for any life at all. It's dying, and it can't be recovered. They're trying. They've got organizations there that are trying to recover and make it viable again, but it's a very, very uphill battle. If they'll ever win, it's going to be nearly a miracle.
And is this because of something like climate change? Or?
Because of uncontrolled economic activity in a communist society. If you look at the history of the USSR, they would pollute entire river streams and just demolish and just horribly ruin some of their lands to produce what they needed for elsewhere. And now expand that to everywhere except China. That's a lot of the world.
Yeah, so it basically is climate change.
And then they declared war on China, saying they're the cause for the pollution. As one of those wars where hey, we need to fight them, so you guys will ignore how bad things are here.
Oh yeah, like most wars.
All too common, yes.
Yeah.
It's all just a sleight of hand distraction.
Yeah.
But it's a good read. I like the concepts. They have some interesting things about like what happens when society collapses, and some very out there worlds where no, humanity basically barely exists. It's a high magic world. They have gods that don't match anything from any other historical world. These gods are insane and animalistic. They prey on humanity.
Okay.
It's not a world you like to be in. It's kind of like a hell world. And then just have a little note on that. It's like, yeah, okay, if you think these worlds, where communism rules is bad, you should see this place, where humanity is just barely able to survive because of insane gods of magical power.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if the insane gods would be able to cross over to other alternate worlds.
Well, that's the thing. I've been reading bits of it, and there are some natural connections between worlds, and that's how they have like a multiverse thing. And sometimes the gods are active, like dangerously active in some areas, and the organizations that can travel through timelines don't like going there.
Yeah.
They consider it like God-plagued. It's a horrible thing because it's a person who has enough power to really hurt them. And if they can get a hold of, time stream changing technology, things can get really ugly really quickly as this one person exerts their immense will all over the various worlds.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That said, I haven't read up on a lot of it as to what the standard is for how they get from A to B, and whether the gods are even aware of other timelines.
Okay, so yeah, not there yet. And that's...
Well, it's probably up in the first part, like the first 15 pages, but I skipped over to read, here, this looks like a good world.
Oh,
look at that.
Different worlds. That's kind of cool, though. Because you can use whatever method whatever you want to get, if it's a campaign, like, with players and stuff, you can use whatever method to get the players to that world. It doesn't have to be the standard.
Or they can just start off, they were always there.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of the worlds are intriguing enough I would consider running in or being in a campaign in such a setting. Even if it's not the GURPS setting, even if they're working on a Die 20 system version of it, I'd very much consider it. Because it's just like, this world sounds intriguing to me. Not exactly the best world to be in. I wouldn't want to personally be there, but it seems like I could have fun with a character in such a land.
Mm-hmm.
So, things like that. That's basically been my week. Decent amount of reading, and just wondering what the heck to do with that big hill.
Very good, yeah.
So, I do have a conspiracy concept this week. It has to do with Putin's anti-gay laws he's put in.
Oh, yes, okay, yeah. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia.
For those who don't know what's been going on, he put in a bunch of repressive laws. You can't even really talk about homosexuality there. and people are basically turning a blind eye to homosexual violence. Apparently, you can curb stomp a person if they wind up being gay. The cops will look the other way now.
Yeah,
it's very dangerous,
that's
especially because what I've been reading for these alternate world histories, that's kind of interesting parallel to what happened initially with the dehumanization of the Jewish population in the early parts of Nazi Germany.
Yeah. Well,
so
Russia
it's like, wow, I just read about that in history, and now they're doing that again, kind of over just to the east of there. That's creepy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Russia has its own history of not being very nice to Jewish people in the past, or to gay people or anything like that.
Anybody they see as a dissident.
Yeah.
Sometimes their own workforce.
But
there's a lot of anger in there.
Yeah, and you kind of hope that the world would sort of progress as a progressive. You sort of look at it.
It's very socially atavistic at this point. But I got to thinking, since he put in these laws, and it's become notorious around the world because Sochi 2014 they're going to have the 2016 the Winter Olympics are going in there. It's going to be like very big, very noticeable. The entire world's going to be looking, and there are some gay athletes. And so what's going to happen
from
to them?
other countries.
Yeah, what's going to happen to these openly gay athletes when they go to Russia, which has these anti-gay laws? Yeah. And it's sparking protests and calls to stop. Don't watch the Olympics this winter, sort of thing, for the Winter Olympics.
Yeah.
Boycott them. Rah, 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 rah.
Well, there's a petition to put the Olympics back in Vancouver, since it's hard to turn something that huge around
that quickly. Yeah.
I suppose the only other option, if you absolutely can't have them in the intended country, in Russia, I suppose, you go to the last country that hosted it, and at least they'll have some kind of infrastructure.
Well, they should. They shouldn't dismantle it that quickly.
Yeah, and the thing about Vancouver, though, is that I'm sure some of it is gone, because it was just...
Well, I know the housing that they've used for the athletes is now apartments and all that, condos. So
people live there. So I mean, they
okay. It's still going to be your condo, but this renowned athlete from this other part of the world, he's going to be bunking with you. So get some stuff out for the couch.
But I'm like, oh, hey, cool, another chance to go to the Olympics, because so Russia is a long way away from here. But if Vancouver had another Olympics, I might actually go this time. I didn't make it to any of the last ones.
I watched them from afar. Honestly, I saw the traffic and how bad it was down there, and it's like, whoa. Even the public transportation system looks super busy. I don't know if I want to, be with that hassle when I can just, go to the corner store, get a bag of chips, walk back, and then just watch the events on my big screen TV, and just eat what I want without having to pay an extra fee for it being at the Olympics. Delicious.
That's a good point, yeah. And I guess, I get caught up in all the hype and wanting to be there, but do I really care that much about winter sports? Not really.
I do like a decent number of them, but don't know if I want to actually be out there as I watch them, downhill mogul racing. Don't know.
Yeah, and I hate to admit on a podcast that goes out to the world, but I'm not the biggest hockey fan either. So. Although
I find I become a bigger hockey fan during the Olympics, and especially when the Canadian team's doing well.
That's true, yeah. You get kind of caught up in what the country is doing.
My wife and I got caught up in hockey when it looked like Vancouver might win the Cup.
Yeah.
And then, we watched the riots. We weren't too into that.
Yeah, the riots were unfortunate. Well, let me see how to contextualize the riots. That sucked.
It sucked pretty hard, but there was so much videotape footage. A lot of people are going to wind up in deep trouble for that.
Yeah, it's funny. They're even just basically right now, they're still getting, somebody got the first conviction, I don't know, a few months ago or a year almost.
They got terabytes of footage to go through. And I think they're working it out so that at one point, by the time they're done, they're going to have everything, properly viewed. It's going to be like a total information awareness system, as you can see what would be going on at almost any point in time during the riots, any location in there to find out. It'll be kind of awesome if they ever release it to the public. I don't think they will.
Interesting. Yeah, if only they had that for the French Revolution and stuff,
Yeah. Oh, look over here. He's stealing bread. He's just stealing bread. Everyone else is going to the Bastille. He's just looting bread out of the window. I gotcha.
But so the actual conspiracy thought.
Yes. is I've noticed there's been a lot of protests worldwide. You know, you go down to the consulate, they have, you know, these, you know, kiss-ins. They get, you know, women and men to pair up down there, and they're kissing in front of the consulate of the Russian embassy.
In, like, Ottawa and stuff?
All over the world where they've got them.
Like every country who has a Russian embassy?
Well, not everyone. I mean, there's Uganda where it's technically illegal to be gay, so I don't think they're doing it there. That'll get you shot.
Okay.
But, yeah, you're seeing them in locations there. Putin went to, I think it was Amsterdam, and the city officials put up gay pride, flags everywhere instead of the regular flags. Just the gay pride rainbow flag everywhere. Just to spite them, apparently. Because, you know, haha, Amsterdam, you so funny that way. But it's very much spurred a lot of it's okay to be gay mentality. And that occurred to me, this is a wonderful example of if you want people to go left, you dodge right. Although I suppose in this case you'd technically be dodging left too, but it's depending on which way you're facing. Yeah. But in this case, it's a simple statement of polarization. If you want them to think one way, you get like a public figure to go so far the other way, nobody wants to be seen with them.
Okay, so you're saying
in this
somebody
case,
is trying to make Putin go super evil about all these laws and making it basically
he's going
illegal.
so hard and just assholishly anti-gay. People that were normally ambivalent about, well, gay, is it good, is it not? I don't really care. They just don't want to be seen as being too close to him, so they're all leaning the other way into the, no, man, I don't like what you're doing here. You're being really, really, you know, like a horrible leader, so I'm going to say it's okay to be gay, even though before I didn't really care about it. And so in the end, it's causing more worldwide pro-gay thoughts and activities than if he had just ignored it entirely.
Yeah, that's an interesting way that, I don't know, the world works, in that if you push one way, people may end up pushing the other way. So you could use this as a conspiracist
to say it's you could I don't like to use the term like pro-gay agenda that the Republicans and down in the U.S. seem to toss out, as though just being seen as human beings is some sort of nefarious agenda. They want to be seen as equals. Ooh.
Yeah. Well,
but they do use it. So if you were a conservative down in America, you could say that this is all, you know, a feigned action by Putin on behalf of the gay secret society that secretly is trying to run the world. I don't know what their thoughts are down there. They got some crazy ideas about things.
Yeah.
But they could say this is just him dodging one way to force the rest of the world into going pro-gay, because they don't want to be seen like with this dick of a dictator.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's just an interesting thing to think about. It's classic dodge and parry. You can think of it in terms of fighting. If you want to get a person's flank open, you can maneuver one way to get them to focus their efforts on another way. And, well, heck, you can work it with boxing.
Okay.
You do a fake shot to the gut to get them to lower their hands, and then with the other hand, bam, shot to the face. It's a classic 1-2 maneuver.
Oh, you're making boxing sound so easy. I think I'm going to go try it.
Well, it's easy enough at the beginning. It gets a little bit more difficult when you start having to anticipate what the other guy's going to do and what their preferences are.
That's the problem, is having boxing with an opponent.
See, and
it's all fun and games when you just have a punching bag.
See, and it gets even worse, though, once you get deeper into boxing, because the more you're into boxing, the more you get hit in the head, which makes it harder for you to think on the fly as to which way they're going, and so you have to start working with just like automatic tricks with yourself there.
Oh yeah, sure.
And then it becomes like a counter sort of thing going on, and the next thing you know, it's just two people that have gotten too many shots to the head just fighting one another, and that's kind of sad.
I've kind of liked the thought, like in martial arts, such as boxing or other like Asian martial arts or things like that, in that you can set up your entire fight just by your initial position, like basically.
And that's what they do a lot in those martial arts films. Is you got the two guys just staring each other down.
Yeah.
And they're walking around in a circle, and they just change their form slowly. because they know how the fight ends based on who starts with which form. And that shows just incredibly how smart and how skilled they are.
Oh, that's very cool.
They don't do that often enough in modern films. I think it's because most of the audience doesn't get what's going on.
Well, I was watching Game of Thrones today, and there's a sword fight in it, and it's very different reading the sword fights in the book than in watching it in the show, because in the book he's like telling you, he's like, oh, and this guy swung with a very unskilled, swing, and he stepped too far forward, and it's like, oh yeah, I totally get it, and like I'm feeling like I'm in on the expertise of the fight. Then I watch the show, and it's like, I can't follow what's going on. They're way too fast.
See, that's why I like why when he describes the fighting in the series I'm reading.
Okay.
In the Wheel of Time, the guys learned several martial arts maneuvers. And they never really describe what the martial arts maneuvers are. He just says, and then he performs Heron takes flight, and that wound up causing the guy to jump back a step, sort of thing. It doesn't actually describe what the heck he's doing, but he just says he performed this maneuver, sort of thing, or this thing. Just wonderful, nice, almost poetic descriptions of whatever it is they're doing. You kind of make up in your own mind exactly what the heck that was. But here's the ultimate effect of it, the end. It strikes me as something that would be very good for a gaming thing.
Yeah.
Is you just come up with like a die 12 table for names of martial arts maneuvers, and then whenever you make your attack roll, okay, it was a success, you hit them, roll your die 12, you performed Tortoise shelters 10,000 people. Booah!
I think there's something like that in the Tome of Battle, Book of Nine Swords.
Probably. I've seen a few of things of it over the years in the various Dragon magazines. Mm-hmm. But it'd be nice to just work up for your own character, just as extra fluff for you, to describe your fighting style. Yeah. And by that, you could have, the Dwarven style, which sounds very, like, hammer rings on anvil, versus the Elven style, which is more like hummingbird, finds nectar.
Yeah.
Depending on what weapon you're using. And I think that can very much make for an interesting martial character, more than just, no, I'm another fighter, and I rolled a 19, so I didn't confirm my crit, but I hit him for 8 points damage. It's not bad. But hammer rings on anvil, and the anvil happens to be the other guy's head. Well, that's a fighting move. That sounds good.
Yeah, or anvil head. It could be his own head, too.
Or I suppose if you want, you just missed it by a little bit, hammer rings on anvil, the anvil could be the shield sort of thing then. However, which way you want to describe it. You could have another table for near misses, what maneuver it was. You tried to perform the right maneuver, but this is what you actually performed. You performed the drunken duck maneuver.
Where were we going with that?
Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of a tangent there. If you want to consider the move one way to force the other guy to move the other, you can think of it in terms of chemistry. Basic water, H2O.
Oh, okay, I have no idea where you're going.
Okay, well, think about it this way. Imagine, in the center, you've got your oxygen molecule, and you've got your two hydrogens coming off.
Okay.
How does that form in the real world?
How does water form in the real world?
How does the bond between them form for water?
The bond between them. I think you input some energy, like electricity.
Well, no. Well, here's the thing: is when you have the water molecule, it's not a straight line sort of thing. You can't just go, H line, O line, H. It doesn't actually form out in a straight line, despite the fact theoretically it could be that way.
Okay. The
one side is polarized positive, the other side polarizes negative, so it winds up becoming kind of like a V shape instead.
So yeah, water. Okay, I've
the water,
seen pictures of water,
and that's why they always show it as a V and not a straight line.
Yeah,
and it's because of this V shape that water winds up forming crystal lattices and formations, which is why ice winds up being less dense than water, despite the fact in almost every other circumstance, a solid is more dense than a liquid, which is more dense than a gas.
Yeah, which is why ice floats and why.
Exactly, and it's just this little polarization that causes these great big effects. The little polarization on the atomic level means ice floats.
So, okay, that's interesting.
That's a fun thing.
I missed your connection.
Well, the oxygen side versus the hydrogen side, you can imagine it, it's a polarization. One side is negative, the other side is polarized slightly positive, and that's what causes these formations. So if you want to imagine, the whole situation of moving one way to get the other person to move the other, you can think of it in terms of chemistry with ionization, positive and negative ends of a molecule.
Okay.
If, chemistry is your thing. I'm just throwing out more examples here that work.
Yeah, well, that's cool. And you got to think in terms of adversarial relationships when you talk about conspiracy theories. If you want to get hippy-dippy and stuff, you want to be like, well, nobody should be repelling other people. We should all be working together and stuff.
And yet it always seems to be a reflexive. If you see a person who's acting like a really big dick, you kind of want to act the opposite way of him. So if you get somebody who purposefully acts that way, he can effectively force you to go the way that opposes him. And thus you can achieve a net positive by having one real nasty person effectively polarizing the crowd around him, and you get more positive than you do negative.
And okay, so this is where we get the origin of internet trolls, for example.
Yes, theoretically done, a few internet trolls properly done can have a great negative effect. One person making, we'll say, a fake gamer girl's comment will cause a dozen people to refute them. And if that keeps happening every time, you wind up getting a net benefit of 11 positive comments as opposed to, just nobody comments anything at all on the photo.
Huh. So you're saying you're in favor of this sort of vile trolling where they say horrible things?
Only when it's done on purpose to create the effect.
Purpose. Oh, yeah.
It has
then
to be,
it's okay.
Well, because let's face it, some trolls are artists. Some trolls do masterful stuff. They really get people to evoke the response they want.
Okay, yeah.
It's an art.
Yeah.
Or as they say, it's a art. Just to cheese off the terminologies.
A good example of an artistic troll, or a good troll, would be what's his name? The guy who wrote A Modest Proposal. Jonathan Swift.
Ah, yes.
Okay. So Jonathan Swift is the ultimate master troll because he writes this essay about eating babies and how they should eat Irish babies.
And that gets people to start seeing the Irish as more sympathetic people because, dude, there's this crazy nut job out here who wants to eat their babies.
Yeah. Well, they call it satire, but I think it's the same thing basically as trolling, right?
Well, see, satire tends to be when people know it's a satire. You watch like a scary movie, one of the series, it's a satire of actual scary movies.
Well, okay.
It's when you can't tell the difference between, dude, are you being serious? That's when it trolls. And if you do it just right so that people are, say, this is so incredibly ridiculous, did you actually mean it? Mm-hmm. That's when you know you got it. And if you do that on purpose, you can wind up causing the greater net benefit. But I honestly don't believe most trolls work for such a positive outcome.
Yeah. Oh, you know who else? Well, again, the difference between a satire and a troll, I'm not sure, but Stephen Colbert.
Oh, yes. Well, that's the thing. I do believe Stephen Colbert works better as an example of a troll, because especially if you go on Facebook and join up with his group, he'll post up a thing, and then he'll get so many people getting angry over what he said. They honestly take him at the face value for what he said. Like, how dare you, you horrible monster. He trolled them. You mad? Yeah. He trolled.
Yeah, I believe that. And
I think he's done a net benefit for the quality of programming for the people who wind up doing crazy things on the news airwaves. Like, people see Bill O'Reilly now as the joke he pretty much always was, as opposed to he's an actual person with legitimate thoughts. Like, no, he's just a joke, whether he knows it or not. And Stephen Colbert helped bring that about.
I suppose he would have been a part of that. And then, what the other thing? Oh, I wanted to bring up this other topic, which I don't know if you've heard about. This is floating around the Geekiverse. Is that Discovery Channel for Shark Week? They aired a fake documentary about how the megalodon was still alive and people were encountering it. So this giant shark that's like, man-eating or boat-eating even from prehistoric times was still alive, and that people should avoid the water because they might get eaten by a megalodon.
Yeah, they got some bad publicity back when they did the whole mermaids thing. It was the fake documentary about like mermaids and how they'd have evolved, and it was the science behind it wasn't that great. But honestly, it was so far out there, you'd have a hard time seeing it as anything except parody. But some people thought it was real. Some people thought they were serious, and so they had to wind up putting something on their website saying, "No, mermaids don't exist. They're fictional. We know they're fictional." This was just a nice, fun example of convergent evolution designs, and they put in some nice explanation as to why. This was just, the whole Megalodon thing was just fake documentary. Shark Week's been going downhill for a number of years.
Yeah, true. And
quality-wise, for actual science, it's more about, they'll eat you, they're horrible beasts.
Mm-hmm.
And, no, they're not, really not. Especially not, if you look at how many sharks die per year because of humans versus how many humans die per year because of sharks, we are much worse a monster than the sharks are.
Yeah, you hear that, sharks? All you sharks out there listening, you got to step up your game and kill more humans.
If you really want to do it, we're willing to grant extra points for vicious half-deaths rather than full deaths.
Goodness. Okay, we went dark there. That's okay.
Well, technically the person survives. But yeah, if you want to be a monster, you got to really earn the title. It's not enough to be like some sort of slasher and say, "Oh, I'm a monster the same way Dracula is." No. You got to up your game.
Yeah.
You got to make it worse. Don't just copy.
So I wonder if, I think that the recent thing with the Discovery Channel can be counted as sort of a failed troll, like a failed attempt at trolling.
Or it could just be an attempt for sensationalism and for ratings.
Okay.
Because let's face it, if you look at a lot of the educational type networks, the History Channel these days has a lot of people picking through garbage in hopes of finding, oh, hey, this is worth something of value to a proper collector. And if you go to the Learning Channel, there's 3-4 hours of Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. I don't need to learn about Honey Boo Boo, thank you.
Learning Channel, yeah.
Yeah. I remember a time they had some great shows. Some things back in when I was back in high school that really inflamed my love of biology and the wonderful weirdness of some species out there. That's a far cry from where they are now, though. So you can call the whole thing just a failed attempt at edutainment television.
Yeah, I guess it's just more. Well, it's too bad it's more of the same, but I don't know. They
still have some good stuff on History Channel every once in a while. And okay, I'm okay with some of the more out there stuff about could this potentially have happened for World War II? Could they really have made a working 100-foot long flamethrower? Turns out, yeah, they can. And it's voiced by, narrated by Tony Robinson from the Blackadder fame. And it's nice to hear his voice, and it's nice to see the whole thing. And there's a good
100-foot flamethrower. It's freaky.
Yeah, it was back during the World War I, during the trench warfare. They built the whole thing underneath. It would basically go through an entire car's tank of gasoline in about a couple seconds. The flamethrower, the plan was it would pop up through the dirt, and the flamethrower would just, scorched earth, everything must die. Yeah. And then out from nearby, after that was done, the soldiers would pop up and then just kill anybody that wasn't still dead. So, granted, that's absolutely horrific when you really think about it in terms of what, inhumanity to man. Yeah. On the other hand, trench warfare was pretty nasty on all sorts, so hooray, they didn't actually get a chance to really use it in that example.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's my conspiracy idea for the week, is the classic example of the dodge one way to force the other person to go in the way you actually intended them.
Right, and or trolling, as it's also known.
Trolling is a great example of it, yes.
We also have, I think we have a main topic to get to for today. So fantasy cultures being influenced by real-world cultures, and your example that you were mentioning earlier before was the Viking...
The Scottish Vikings that appear in the whole movie How to Train Your Dragon.
Right, yeah.
It's a good movie on its own. Apparently it's a far cry from the books. They diverge very early on, and things are very different, but in its own right, not a bad movie. Wonderfully animated. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
But
I liked it.
There's one bit that always caught in me, is that they're supposed to be Vikings, except all the adults speak with a Scottish accent, and the children don't speak with any accent. They've got like the American style English.
Yeah, well, wouldn't Vikings what are those islands way up north? Like the Orkney Islands or the Hebrides, are they called? Or the...
Well, so that's the thing is...
Shetland Islands?
The Vikings are Scandinavians. They should have Scandinavian accents. They should sound almost like a parody of somebody from IKEA.
Like the Swedish Chef or something.
Yeah. Although I don't know how much sense the whole thing would make if it was all just Swedish Chef
That
speak.
was it. You probably didn't hear that my Swedish impression, and I'm not doing it again.
But and that's the bit that always caught me. It's because it's like, dude, you're supposed to be Vikings. Why don't you speak like you know, admittedly, it's just a wonderful pastiche of things. The land they're living on is not really habitable. They're getting resources from somewhere that they never mention. Where are they getting all this wood from? There's no sign that you can grow that many trees on their little area.
It could have been like a fictional island, or maybe like, you know, one of those lost islands that sunk under the sea, you know, 500 years ago.
But here's the thing: is the terrain was pretty much vertical. There wasn't a lot of horizontal area to grow things like crops or, you know, raise sheep. There's don't get me wrong, there's a forest here and there, but a lot of where they portray the whole thing to be, it's unrealistic geography. I'm okay with that.
Well, they eat fish. They do eat.
They do a lot of fishing, yeah.
But one of the interesting things about the Vikings in Greenland, though, one of the reasons why they didn't survive 500 years ago, is that they refused to eat certain sea animals. Like, I'm not sure if it was walruses or seals, basically whales, things like that. They were like, nope, not gonna eat those.
And so they starved.
And yeah.
The end.
But
this got me to thinking, though, is okay, I'm willing to overlook the glaring errors here and there, because I got no clue where they're getting all this metal from for all their weapons and armor and everything they're using. There's no sign of a mining culture or anything. They must be trading.
They would trade with other.
What do they have to trade, though?
Dragon eggs.
Well, that's the thing. Dragon body parts, I suppose.
Or fish, maybe, or walrus.
Well, the thing is the guy in the start he describes the place as it snows 9 months of the year and hails for the other 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you're pretty much going to need as much fish as you can. So you really don't have a lot to trade out. But you know, I'm willing to overlook a lot of this stuff, and I was thinking these guys are
maybe their home country maybe like kicked them out or something, or exiled them, and they're just basically paying them in iron and armor and stuff just to keep them from coming back.
You guys are too crazy. You're speaking with the wrong accent. Get the hell off our land.
I think that's how Iceland started. Basically.
No, it wasn't more.
He killed someone, and he had to be exiled, and then he started a new colony, and they basically had to send money with him and stuff. But
he was powerful enough he could take it with him, sort of thing. But it was more like we kind of have to exile you. It's in our law system. Anybody else wants to go with them, have fun. Keep writing, man. Let's keep in contact, eh?
I think they did. They were good. Like, they sailed around and they did trading and stuff, so it's all good.
Yeah.
There were Vikings in Ireland, for example.
But you shouldn't necessarily imagine a Viking with the Scottish accent. It would be almost like going to Britain, you know, historical Britain, and imagining people with Spanish accents everywhere. Everyone's got a Spanish accent.
Well, I don't know, because historical Britain, you could at least, if you use the period-specific appropriate language, our people from our time would be able to sort of understand it. But if you had the Vikings speaking Norwegian,
you go in some areas there.
Danish.
Yeah, you go into some areas of Britain, and they'd all be speaking French, and I got that. That's back when, you know, that's how we got the term lingua franca. Everyone spoke, you know, French, because that was like the language everybody spoke, and it was like your basic trade language.
I think lingua franca was a reference to Latin because it was the language of the Franks spoken during the Crusades, which they could all understand.
Yeah, it's a combined language that you wind up speaking. Although I know periods of Russia, if you were educated at all, you spoke French. And so you came up with a situation where anybody who was the higher class spoke French. If you need to progress anywhere socially, you got to know French.
Okay.
Yeah, but their average person only spoke Russian. And so you had this weird disconnect that there wasn't even a common language between the ruling class and the workers.
Yeah.
Which probably has caused a lot of the problems that still fall out to this day. It's like, they can't even understand us. You know what they do understand? Fire. Let's burn them.
Unfortunately, yeah, that's been up until not too recent.
Everybody understands sword and fire.
Yeah.
It's a universal language. But so I was willing to overlook the broad strokes, and I was thinking to
yeah.
myself, these guys are pretty friggin' tough. They are like, oh my goodness, they're so ready to fight. They're almost perpetually violent. Wait a minute, that sounds kind of like an orc. And it occurred to me, well, orcs don't have much of a culture equivalency in reality. Historically, they've been portrayed as kind of like Neanderthals, but we're understanding more of them. That it's like they had culture, they did all sorts of fun stuff. Neanderthals are actually, kind of decent humans or semi-humans or however
Semi-humans,
well,
yeah,
however you want to defend where humanity is and where it ends.
I'll put it this way: if you met a Neanderthal like in our modern time and like you got transported by a time machine, you would probably consider them an odd-looking
Well,
person.
if you were to get like a Neanderthal infant and raise them up,
he or she learned how to speak English. Oh,
that's why I say you get an infant. So that way it's effectively just biologically Neanderthal.
Yeah. You would consider them human. You would say, oh yeah, that's a person.
You might say it's a bit of a prominent brow ridge on them, man. They gotta really look angry when they get angry. But you wouldn't say like, oh, they don't look really human. It looks like they're wearing some sort of crazy mask. No.
But if you see a person like in our time, if you see somebody who's got a weird like a brow or something,
very prominent jawline, thick brow, and a nice wonderful.
Do you immediately like jump up and down and point at them saying Neanderthal, Neanderthal?
No, and that's the thing is they're close enough to us. That's why I say because all the data is not fully in yet. Where humanity effectively ends and where it begins on a historical perspective. I'm not going to quabble too much on that.
Yeah,
I'll let the professionals work with that later on.
Although would orcs not? I guess.
See, that's the thing is they interbreed with humans.
So they're technically probably the same genus. They're probably Homo something.
Homo robustus, I believe, is what the term they technically use in Shadowrun.
In Shadowrun, yeah.
Homo pugilus and Homo robustus for trolls and orcs. And all
Although
that sort
I think in Shadowrun they're more like descendants of Homo sapiens.
Oh, well, that's the thing is they just like orc out was the term for it. It's one day, 1 in 10 people around the Earth just painfully undergoes a transformation, becomes either an orc or a troll because of racing magic levels. And So, but that's another thing entirely.
Different topic.
But orcs are effectively miscible with humanity for terms of gene propagation.
Yeah, sounds all right. Yeah.
So what I said, but they don't have much of they don't, even in the fantasy worlds, they don't have much of a culture. They just occupy stuff, create ramshackle stuff, and then they invade, and they're what you kill for, in 2nd edition, 15 experience points apiece. Ooh. 65 if they wind up being, like elite orcs. Ha!
Yeah.
And I suppose that's all you really need, basically. But it does deprive them of a lot of potential. So I was thinking, well, what if you took the orc persona and then applied the Scandinavian Viking top on them? And it's like, what? That kind of works, not bad. I can see the nice parallels. You could trim the corners around and tuck in, nip in there, and hey, it could work.
Yeah. Well, I sort of see the Vikings as being generally that soul society, being a more civilized, more advanced society than what the orcs would have. But I don't see why you couldn't have tribes of orcs who learned from Vikings, or even influenced Vikings in some way, and kind of trade. Maybe they even trade with them or fight them or whatever.
Well, I see from a gaming perspective, it works like this: is that orcs come to attack you, you must repel them to save your own people. Vikings come to raid you. You must, destroy them to protect your goods and your people. Seems fairly close. For the point of them being the enemy, you could just mix those two together, and then you come up with a bunch of orcs that have the helmed horns. They're pretty darn good sailors. It seems to work to me.
Well, it certainly works as a storyteller. I mean, it's not your archetype. But
no, but it could definitely become a way to remember the orcs, as opposed to they're just a bunch of experience points and hit points waiting to die for you to loot.
Yeah, but do you think if players encountered Viking orcs, would they come away from that encounter thinking that all orcs were like Vikings, or do you think they would come away thinking, oh, those were some odd orcs that were acting just like Vikings?
Well, if you put it in the whole thing that this is what the orc society is like. They're raiders. Mm-hmm. They're horrible pillagers. They steal your women, your gold, and they come in the middle of the night. Orc vision. You want to actually have your raiding at night.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. All the more terror it sows in the humanity upon the shores.
Yeah. But it's not really common, like at least not, I don't think it's been done before that orcs have been very skilled craftsmen and been able to build things like boats and have iron weapons and armor and things like that, which Vikings would.
Well, that's the thing is, in most stuff they actually do have the weapons to use, whether they stole them or maybe what they're doing for stealing slaves, people away for slavery. They're looking for the skilled people, the craftsmen, take them back home. They do the crafts work, and then the orcs just do the crazy fighting.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and so that got me to thinking: is you could have an interesting amount of fun with this. If you're only knowledgeable with European history, you could just take a group of European ethnic type from almost anywhere, cross-combine that with a fantasy race, just to change things up.
I'm not even sure if I know that many European
historical stereotypes.
Stereotypes.
Well, if you want, you can work with other groups too. But it depends on where your knowledge skills lie.
Sure. Or yeah. Okay.
But you could have some interesting ones just to change things up and change. The thing is, elves are traditionally seen as being very dilettante, very dexterous. I think a Renaissance France might work well for them. Maybe even Renaissance Italy. That might work out well. You want to go for gnomes as being, hard workers that work on practical stuff, for inventions and stuff. Well, that sounds like it could be portrayed British around the Industrial Revolution style.
Oh, the gnomes could be Scottish, eh? How about that?
Well, you got to be careful because if you go Scottish-Irish too much for gnomes, they wind up becoming leprechauns.
Okay.
So you got to be careful about exactly, which group they fall into for that, within the real world historics.
I don't think leprechauns are too big on things like building and technology and stuff.
No,
They're
and
magical.
that's where it starts to fall back against itself.
Well,
Whereas, so if you were to
though.
try and make a bunch of Irish gnomes, you'd wind up with leprechauns, and then they kind of lose out the bit about gnomes like to work on inventions and stuff, and they have lots of fun with that. No, they're just a bunch of people that carry gold and do crazy things in the woods to get people to give up trying to find their gold.
Well, that works. I mean, that furnishes several encounters and stories, but maybe not. I don't know how long it would last.
Exactly. So you got to be careful with this whole thing. Whereas if you take the gnomish mindset of I work with inventions, but practical things,
okay,
then you put that with the Industrial Revolution style for the British or whichever one you want to work with. That seems to work out well, and then
So you're thinking like steampunk Victorian England kind of deal?
Or early steampunk style, I suppose. But that's the thing, is they work with practical inventions, so they wouldn't necessarily be London, steampunk style. They'd be more rural. They'd be working the fields. They might come up with a tractor or something, as opposed to like a steam-powered hat that punches a boxing glove out at somebody.
Well, what race do you think Leonardo da Vinci should be?
Now that's an interesting one, because the big beard on him says dwarf.
Okay.
On the other hand, he's a very skilled inventor and thinker who lived a long life, so you could work with half-elf on that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
On the other hand, the beard and the inventor also works with gnome, too. So he could work in several different ways, just taking the character and then fitting him into the various fictional race archetypes. You could even have him be an elf, just an elf that lives with humans. He's lived with them for 400 years, and he's been learning enough of their tricks. He's an elf that can think at the speed of a human, and he's been able to pick up the thing. He's hit that critical knowledge mass where he's starting to put out stuff at the same speed that humans can, but he's got 4 centuries of experience behind him. That's how he does it. Ba-da-ba-bum.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, we've solved the Da Vinci problem.
That's the thing is, Da Vinci, a man like him, could technically work for almost any archetype depending on how you want to work it. You could have him be the reason the orcs are good at making boats all of a sudden. The Orcish Da Vinci is the guy who figured out the way to teach the orcs to make a boat. His trick was just figuring out a way for Orcish education system to happen. Which is a scary, scary thought when you think about it for a little bit. So there's that. But, it occurs to me you could have a lot of fun just playing against types sometimes with these characters. Like, you could take the elven style. Yes, they're good with arms and all that, so maybe they work with Renaissance France. On the other hand, elves are kind of freaking hoity-toity, and nothing a human does is good enough because it can't match the elfish natural grace. Elves, elves, elves. Superior, superior, superior. They're Nazis. Bam!
I did not see where you were going with that. Okay, yeah.
And then they just have to wipe out the rest of the people because they're not as good, not as graceful as the natural elvish ability can be.
Okay, so yeah, Nazis are like Aryans or something.
And let's face it, a lot of people portray elves as being like uber Aryan style.
Blonde hair, blue eyes, kind of.
Yeah, it starts playing into itself. You think it works against, but it actually melds surprisingly well.
Yeah, well, I think Nazi elves or like fascist elves have been done in some certain fantasy works, for sure.
But and you can work with it for some of the monstrous races to definitely create more culture for them. I like goblins. Goblins have fun. They're kind of comic relief and just dangerous enough to be a threat. So you could combine them with a culture, like an actual culture, because once again, they are a fantasy race in most settings that doesn't really have a culture. You find them in a cave, you kill them, you loot them, or they attack your place in the middle of the night, you repel them, you loot them. And so by giving them a culture, you can really make them be more.
So you have a proposed... do you have something in mind for goblins?
No, I'm actually leaving this one blank, Josh. Come up with a concept for them.
Okay. Goblins should be Albanians.
Albanians? Okay. So
Yeah.
what about the Albanian archetype works for them that enhances them?
They like to ski.
Ooh, skiing goblins.
And let's see. I don't know. They like to sing, I think.
Okay, here. That's what.
And they like to drink beer.
Well, everyone likes to drink beer. But let's work it like this. Let's make them, cross them with the Swiss. Because the Swiss are neutral, while goblins are almost always evil. So let's have some fun with this. By adding the Swiss stereotypes we have to goblins, instead of just being, ruthless, petty vandals, they become really, really nasty bookkeepers. They're able to embezzle the best of the world. You combine the Swiss banking with the goblin evil, bam.
Goblins,
nasty bankers. On the other hand, they're so good at this stuff, if you want to keep your book straight for a business, you basically got to have with yourself, a goblin bookkeeper. They would make great quartermasters, although you're going to definitely want to keep tabs to see how much they're skimming off. They still like skiing. And in this case, they happen to be good with timepieces. They make goblin army knives and goblin watches.
Yeah. Okay.
And all of a sudden, bam, they have something. And then instead of putting them in the what's their native terrain? I think it's fields, right? They're native to the grasslands and plains.
Goblins?
Yeah.
Well, I
D&D.
sort of think of them as being sort of hill-dwelling people.
Well, there we combine that with the Swiss Alps. They live in the valleys between there.
Okay, yeah, they can live in the valleys. But
and yes, they wear lederhosen just for the fun of it.
Okay, yeah, I'm buying it. I'm picturing it. Now the problem though is what do you encounter when you need a creature who has no culture? What sort of, I guess you move beyond goblins now because we've turned goblins into something who has a background, but we need a scary critter that lives in a cave. I guess we'll
troglodytes,
kobolds, troglodytes, and then. So are we going to leave them without a culture, or are we just going to say?
No, well, I mean, you can always pick and choose between little bits of cultures and then cobble up something yourself.
Yeah, and I guess the reason why orcs and goblins and those bad guys don't have cultures because they might be illiterate for one thing, so they can't pass on their history as well.
Although to be fair, a lot of people in human history were illiterate, and they still managed to keep at least some semblance of what we call civilization going.
Yeah, I guess because they have oral traditions, so sure, why not? But also they have short lives.
We can use the concept of an oral tradition for a wonderful thing for them. We'll take troglodytes. Troglodytes, in this case, we'll combine them with the druidic stuff from really old style England.
Ancient Britain.
Ancient Britain.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, instead of just becoming a bunch of smelly people that are really primitive, okay, maybe they still stink, but at least they have a deep, rich culture with the earth, because they're like druidic. They could go out and like build, chop down trees and build houses and stuff, but they purposefully don't do it because I think that's a violation of the earth itself. You have to live in the caves to be true with nature. Oh, that sounds pretty nice to me.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good, yeah. And then so when the characters encounter troglodytes, the troglodytes growl in their troglodyte language about how beautiful the earth is, and the character's like, well, I don't understand, so stab.
Yeah, and the fun thing is it explains why they seem so primitive. They don't have metal weapons, they don't have houses or anything like that. It's all built out of just the earth and stone, and no, they have a reason for it now instead of just, haha, look at them, they're stinky primitives. That sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, but, okay, now, but, so maybe one of the characters in the party knows troglodyte language or something.
Well, so that's the thing, is because they'd be so in touch with nature. If you want to find out, like, there's something going wrong, like, why did this river dry up? We don't know, but we can go ask the people that know more about the natural earth in the area than anything else, because the elves are, being fascist Nazis up over elsewhere.
Okay, so yeah,
ask the troglodytes. You have to negotiate your way with their primitive culture. Might be real nice of you not to bring too much metal with you, because that's definitely not one with nature, man. So you leave your metal items at home if you want to negotiate properly with them. Bring pelts and maybe grains and fruits, I suppose. Everyone digs food.
So the troglodytes don't eat meat?
Well, they could eat meat, I assume, but for them, I guess it would be a little bit more primitive styling. It would be raw meat. You can't eat it cooked.
Must be raw, okay. Do they eat humans? They are evil.
Raw? Yes, they do. That's why you got to bring the food to make sure they're full when you want to start talking to them.
There we go, okay.
Lest the topics start turning to, do you want some chuck roast? Oh no, the fighter's name happens to be Chuck.
Alright, very good.
Although I suppose they wouldn't roast them. But see, I think it works out quite nicely that way. You can, just by adding little bits and pieces here, you've suddenly turned, 65 experience points and ability to nauseate a person into something that has worthwhile, that has threads. You don't necessarily attack them. You have to negotiate with them for information.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
And I always think you can have a whole lot of good fun with this sort of thing, especially when you start considering things around and start giving them more. Like, I've always liked lizard folk, but they've been very oddly represented. They've always been an underling to these evil rulers of theirs. I like what they did in Faerun, where there's a reason why the evil rulers are there. They're demonic in origin. They're like half-fiends. And
okay.
They rule through strength. You don't want to fight this guy because, dude, sometimes he's half demonic, sometimes he's half dragon. Either way, he's got an ability that can really freaking hurt you. So, we'll just follow him for now. But you could work at, you could do some fun reading, learn up on the native tribes of the Amazon area. The lizard folk areas could then wind up being your XP style for the native people of Amazon.
Of the Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that works well, because especially if you really swampify the Amazon up there, make it like, you could cross-combine it with like the Bayou from New Orleans to create their wonderful giant swampy land, and that's where they live. Not great numbers, but spread out, and so you better, work with them, otherwise you're going to be fighting them in the bog for however many dozen miles. Sounds like a fun time to me.
Yeah, that is good.
Or again, you could play them against type. You could work them as a post-apocalyptic society.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe it wasn't always swampland. Maybe there was an ecological catastrophe, and now they've got so much extra water, and the whole water levels raised up as opposed to what it used to be. They were once civilized, lizard people, and now they've been reduced to barbarism. So you can take like some stuff like apocalypse style stuff you've got that would otherwise be like futuristic technology in the hands of the lizard folk. What are they doing with ray guns? Well, dude, their ancestors built them. These things are still run.
This is the GURPS influence once again.
GURPS influence. There's a lot of stuff I have that I've just never made use of. I have D20 Apocalypse. I have D20 Future. Never been able to really make use out of them because I just haven't run a campaign. That's finite time, finite people. Mm-hmm. So it'd be nice to make use of it. Have a little fun with it. Just enjoy, man. Just play against type, play with type. And that way you could have them as, the savage type people you know now, but you could still have these wonderful places to go into and loot. Because, of course, you're a D&D adventurer. You're always going into places and loot and stuff. That's just what you do.
Yeah, sure.
You go in there and you could actually see signs of like a high advanced civilization for them. Make you think twice about the people you're dealing with. They're not just a source of experience, and loot.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you say, oh, well, turn them into, like, pretend that they had a past once upon a time. You could add to your campaign world an entire, like, a civilization, like a lost civilization that, I don't know, barricaded themselves, and they are basically advanced, walking around, lizard men in togas walking around this Atlantean square.
I can dig that, man. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the heart of the Lizard Man swamp area, there's a giant mesa, and if you go up the mesa, that's where the rest of their old civilization still exists. But with a wonderful barrier of geography and their natural powered technology, they can't hold more people than, say, X number of things. So
yeah, that's sure. Yeah, that would explain why
they don't just invite all their brethren up and uplift them up. No, what they have is just what they have. They can't hold anymore, and so they're just a holding pattern until they can figure out a solution or the land changes to their favor once again. And honestly, that sounds like a really nice campaign. I wouldn't mind playing through something like that.
Yeah, well, that could be the center of a campaign. Even if you were to use that as a base of operations, you could go out and explore abandoned temples and
Yeah, everybody could be lizard men from this society, and they got to go out into the ruins of it and bring back more information and more knowledge and items. And hopefully, with all this stuff, the learned scholars can devise a way to fix and release their civilization back on the world again, and have all the lizard people thrive.
Yeah, I wonder if they'd worship dragons or have dragon gods or
probably draconic stuff. I see a snake god or two in there.
Snake god, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a good snake god or an evil one. I haven't thought this too far through. Maybe it's just neutral. Maybe they've got a Hydra god. Maybe that's the evil one. Because Hydra's seen with his water, multi-headed, scaly.
Yeah.
Maybe the evil Hydra deity is the reason for it.
Now, how come Hydras don't have their own society and culture?
I think it's because their intelligence is considered so low that they just don't do that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Hydras are more bestial then. Okay.
Which is an interesting way to play it. If you want to have a campaign that works a little differently, you can have Hydras be just, we'll make them snake people with extra heads. In which case, they are the center of each little, we'll say a small land estate. Mm-hmm. They work through a semi-republic. Each head,
feudal lords or something? Or?
Each head is in control of a certain part of the estate.
Oh, yeah.
And then they all have to work together if they want the entire estate to work, as one. This case would be more like a city estate sort of thing.
Oh, I like the sort of the implications of that, because multi-headed sort of implies multi-directional, as if you were you don't really have a focus, and I don't know.
This goes back to my, eventually to my idea of having a campaign where everybody plays one person. It'd be like a four-headed person, and you guys have to decide as one how the body's going to go and what you're going to do.
That's so weird, but so wonderful.
It could be really entertaining. If you get a good group, if you get a group that fights each other, it's basically a show up to argue for 4 hours, go home.
Well, doesn't that sound fun, though?
Sometimes, but I wouldn't want it as a permanent thing.
I guess, yeah. I don't know if I would want to play
Don't make me take control of the left arm and stab you.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play a permanent campaign at all with if we were all like one person, but
it might be nice to try for maybe a shorter campaign style.
Maybe like 2 or 3, yeah.
But, you know, those oddball campaigns are always fun. I do recall you playing one where it was an intelligent Ioun stone and a talking dog.
Yeah, and Les was the other person. Was it?
It was Travis.
Me and Travis?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
It was a fun, I think, one night sort of one-off adventure.
Yeah, and those are fun for one time.
So having a communal body sort of thing might be entertaining for maybe 2 or 3 to see how much you guys can actually do in concert.
Yeah. Although, like, I like that as a metaphor for the 4-man party, because in effect, if you're doing it right, you should be working together almost
so coordinated enough you can't have just the one body with the 4 heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice team building exercise, we'll say, for this.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, there's just so much out there for real world examples for groups of people. And honestly, I find it's nice because that way you get a chance to sit down, hit Wikipedia, read up on these sorts of things. Ah, okay, I'm learning this. Oh, I'm looking at that. And next thing you know, you're a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser.
Oh, yeah, thanks to Wikipedia very much.
Well, thanks to Wikipedia and your own desire to, increase the capacity of what your campaign can do for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And your players. So, I mean, you could have, you could take some of the more bestial creatures and pattern them off of real-life animals. If you want to keep, say, ogres more monstrous, find a few documentaries on apes. Aggressive apes. And then just, trolls are just like, their movements and their cells are just equivalent to just a giant apes. And then bam. Sure, maybe they're smart enough to understand things and talk with you, but in this campaign here, if you want to, fight them, they wind up going, ooh, ah, and they, reach up and they smash you.
Ooh, ah.
Whatever you want to do for them. I mean, you can find out and make a few notions about that and say it's the Orcish language. Yeah, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that. Well, I mean, heck, we got the word barbarian out of for the fact that to the Romans, the people there kept saying like bar, 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 bar.
The people of North Africa?
Well, I'm not certain exactly where it was specifically, but they kept sound like bar, bar, bar.
Yeah.
So I guess the ogres could be, ogres, because they keep going, oh.
Oh, very good.
There you
go.
go.
Very good, yes.
So yeah, and there you go. Just by looking up some animals sort of thing, you can get some really more interesting bestial stuff that seems more real.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not to say always you need something real. I mean, every once in a while it's fun to toss a land squid on the players. No, it's the tree-climbing land squid. It jumps on you and latches on. Not a big threat, but boy, is it surprising.
Yeah, and it has no culture of its own.
Well, no, it's just, in this case, an animal. And there's no real animal you can base it off of except for maybe the drop bear, they keep saying for Australia.
Yes, the Australian drop bear, yes.
So, there's fun things you can do with that. No, we don't got drop bear. We got, land squid that just drop out of the trees at you.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose if you make it a humid enough jungle, you can say something that looks so slimy and almost aquatic lives there. Seems to work. At least in my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's we were talking about the Amazon a little bit earlier. There are parts of the Amazon that flood for like a good portion of the year, and fish basically swim around the bases of trees, sort of deal. So you could have something like that. You could have some squids like lay eggs in the tree, and then they go dormant for so many years, and then oops, accidentally they hatch early, and they're landing on people.
Well, you could work them almost like frogs, because, you can get the frogs on land, you can get the frogs in the water, you can get these creatures to be, these land squid to be effectively amphibious squid. They'll climb up on the trees, and they'll hold up there, and they'll wait, because that way it keeps them out of, like, crocodiles and all that stuff. They're out of the water from the crocodiles, and they just wait till prey passes down, latch on, rah. Make them vampiric, they drain blood. Extra scary. Ooh.
Yep, sounds good.
I dig it. And that way, every once in a while, you'll see like an emaciated creature just laying at the base of a tree. It's like, what do they got down there for like herbivorous creatures? Anything of decent size?
What a giant guinea pig? What cassowary? Is it? No, that's a bird.
I will just call them boars.
Cassowary is a bird. Yeah.
Well, that could be pretty scary too. It gets a bird, when it's in the nest, and then you find just a bunch of small desiccated birds on the ground.
Is it not a bird? Oh well, I don't know. Wiki it.
Yeah, but you could have it, just to heighten the player's suspense. As you find a bunch of desiccated birds down on the ground, you find a desiccated boar down on the ground, or a giant sloth or a giant rat down on there, just all desiccated of blood. They're going, what the heck is doing this? This must be nasty. No, it's just a opportunistic predator. Blah, land squid down on you.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the lesson about nature too, is that nature does some pretty gross things.
Oh, yes. But on the other hand, you can't blame it, because nature technically doesn't have a morality, and that's why most animals have the neutral alignment.
That's true. That's interesting that you say most, but okay.
There are some creatures that work with benevolence, and they cooperate with each other. So I'm willing to say some creatures, natural creatures, could have what can be considered a neutral or neutral good alignment. Dolphins, I think, are a great example.
Well, dolphins can... I imagine dolphins are intelligent enough that they can be either good or evil, depending. Well, because I've heard of dolphins being kind of jerks.
Kind of jerks. Sometimes they help, people, and, showing them which way is the shore. And other times, they're at SeaWorld, they'll jump up on a lady and just start rubbing, and that's kind of creepy. So maybe at best chaotic neutral, chaotic good sort of thing. Maybe?
Dolphins, I would put in the category of humans in that they tend towards neutral as a group, but there are individual dolphins who can be good, and there are other individual dolphins who can be evil.
On the other hand, you don't really hear about any stories about I was drowning and the dolphin led me out deeper to water and left me when the shark came.
Well, yeah, I guess the reason why you didn't hear those stories is obvious.
Well, sharks aren't really that bad, as we've discussed. So
true, yeah.
And we're getting better and better at making sure we have a phone with us everywhere, so you can 911. I'm being eaten by a shark. Follow my signal wherever I am to triangulate, and please don't let me die.
Yeah, so you would hear stories about that. Yeah,
I think it'd become more common. But you could take some examples from a lot of the creatures that work well together. Humanity's always seen as working well with dogs, but I know in Africa they have a bird that it plays a certain song around a person when it knows where a beehive is.
Oh.
And so if you know what this song is, which most of the people down there should, because yeah. So what they do is they'll lead you to where the beehive is, and then the human gets some wood together, starts a small smoke-based fire, smokes the bees out, gets the honey, shares the honey with the bird. Bird gets honey, human gets honey. Bees get screwed. Oh well.
Okay, yeah, I'd call that a good alignment. Sure, why not?
Well,
it might be.
Well, if you combine enough of these together into a fictional animal, you could definitely have something with enough of a good alignment to warrant it.
Mm-hmm. And there are peaceful, members of the ape family, like bonobos, are peaceful. They have their own interesting things that they do, but they're not violent the way chimpanzees often are.
Oh yes, yes. Everyone loves the chimpanzee until it's clawing at your face. On the other hand, you can definitely see some creatures as being almost evil. Crocodiles, I think, make for a decent example off the top of my head. They don't always like fresh flesh. They like it rotted, they like it desiccated, and so you'll have situations whereby they will attack a creature and then put it somewhere where it can't escape and just let it slowly die over the course of days, and then just eat the flesh a week later when it's rotten and really chewy.
And that's evil. Okay.
Or a close enough example to evil. If you start combining those again with other stuff, you can create a naturally evil animal.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking there are parasitic animals which seem evil to us. So, yeah, there's animals that will kick the eggs out of the other animals' nests and lay their own eggs there.
Mind you, with birds, there's a lot of extra pair copulation, so technically it's not so bad for half of the parents on 50% of the eggs.
Okay.
Because it really wasn't their own, eggs in there.
No, but a different species. Even.
Yeah.
Might be.
But with some bird species, 50% of the eggs in the nest won't belong to one or even both of the inhabitants of the nest. So kicking out the egg, if it winds up kicking out the right eggs and planting its own, it's not like it's actually losing out too much for the one.
I suppose. I mean, yeah. Obviously the.
But that's a very set-up example.
You call the relationship parasitic, but obviously both species still exist, so there's some...
It's not too parasitic. It's not so virulent that it causes collapse. Yeah, you can just set up all sorts of wonderful examples with that and apply that to fictional animals. I've had some interesting fun playing with let's see, it was gargoyles being a migratory species.
Okay.
So I just took the migratory patterns of like animals. Okay, they go here to here, and from the summer to winter and winter to summer sort of thing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they seem more alive. All of a sudden, gargoyles don't seem more like a monster. They seem like a natural part of a world. They migrate. You got to be careful because in the fall, the gargoyles come south for the winter.
Is that what you want though? I guess it's nice to have for a change, but I sort of think gargoyles are more exciting and interesting if they're a little bit unnatural.
Well, it doesn't necessarily need to be gargoyles. You could make them harpies. Any creature that's monstrous and flies could work well enough. It could be wyverns. Mm-hmm. They seem like it would be a nice one.
Yeah,
but
I almost picture wyverns for sure being sort of migratory because there's no way they can just live in one area just because they're so big. They have to eat so much.
Yeah. But, any which one it works with, it adds the sense of it being more real. So you can do a lot of good stuff just by reading up on your own ecology, reading up on the history of various peoples, and just applying that knowledge into your campaign.
Yeah. Well, and you do have to balance that with, because you want that sort of sense of wonder, unless, well, maybe you don't, I don't know. Because often I will try and explain everything, and I wonder if I'm doing my stories a disservice because you need some sort of supernatural or you need miracles or something,
Well, you can always work at that. There is an answer, you just don't tell it to the players. If they really want to figure it out, let them look it up, research it out, man. Spend the time and the effort. Otherwise, no, it's there and I assure you it is, but if you want to find out, you're going to have to talk to people. I'm not just going to tell it to you.
Oh, that's good, because you could put something very arcane in there that you know the answer to. Like, that these creatures migrate for 7 years or whatever, and that they're just waking up, and that's why they dropped on the players at that precise moment, or whatever.
And that's why I like the concept of the migratory gargoyle, because that way there's a different encounter table for the area based on the time of year.
Yeah. But as far as the players are concerned, it's like a gargoyle appeared out of nowhere.
But if they're paying attention, they'd know that they were warned by the local people. No, you don't keep livestock out in the fall. That's when gargoyles come out, and they'll steal your cows, and eat the flesh of it. If you really want to make travel, you do it during the summer. That's when you get all that stuff done.
Gargoyles can eat cows?
Well, I'd imagine like a pack of them coming down and just ripping a cow to shreds and eating what they can and flying off.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah, doesn't that sound dangerous now?
Yeah.
Or, again, you could always play against type for these sorts of things. You could work it so that the migratory species is something that we know as being a more sedentary one. Like, we could make it so that, in which case, pick a species that just kind of stays in one area.
Hedgehogs.
Hedgehogs are migratory. They're like lemmings, except instead of actually going off the cliff, which everyone knows now, hopefully, that they don't actually do, they just migrate wonderfully south, every couple of years, and then they work themselves back up so that they don't overgraze the area.
They should be like giant hedgehogs and be like literally make walls that people can't get past, like super thick skin and like actual hard spikes, and then they do a grazing wall. And they'll like cover an entire field, and they'll just advance slowly across the fields, like almost like an army. So if you live in that field, or if you're trying to get by, there's no way to get past this basically wall of hedgehogs as they march. Unless
you've got like one of those 10-foot poles to vault over top of.
Yeah, I suppose you could vault over.
And then finally, somebody has a decent use for a 10-foot pole.
The spikes would be, just for the heck of it, the spikes would be super sharp. So you couldn't really climb them unless you had, I don't know, maybe a super thick suit of leather or something, or
Yeah.
basically armor.
And that way you make it like a wonderful force, like how they have described, like when a fire advances in a wildfire. If you want to avoid something like that, and in which case you just say no, it's a wild line of giant hedgehogs. There you go.
That's a nice image. I think we're nearing the end of our time for today. So I just want to remind the listeners that they can send us email, thesimulationist@gmail.com.
Especially if they've got some real nice ideas about combinations.
Yeah.
If you've got something that like goblins fit perfectly into, tell us, man. Let's have some fun with that.
Cool. So final thoughts on wrapping up different stuff, cultures.
Well, I just think it pays to learn. The more you learn, the more you can apply elsewhere. This technically applies to almost anything, but people and animals, especially within most campaign settings, are really the core of where you want to go. If the animals and the monsters seem more realistic, if the cultures seem more, because I love Ravenloft, mostly for the culture that the areas have.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the only places I've seen where I really want to play a person who tries not to fight, who works with a weapon that doesn't deal the best damage per round, because, no, that's how they do it culturally.
Okay.
That's their style.
Yeah, well, I mean, that seems a little silly when you're, if it's a matter of life and death, if it's serious, then, but I
Listen, if it was a matter of true life and death, then I'd rather die a gentleman than survive as some horrible, degenerate who just attacks with a horrible sword just based on the strength of my arms. If I am going to win, I will win as a nobleman. How about thee? Riposte!
And then stab, you're dead.
But I died a gentleman and a scholar.
And then you come back as like an undead or something.
Well, it is Ravenloft, yeah. And honestly, a lot of their undead people could stand more undead gentlemen in there.
They're not very refined. Ravenloft undead.
They tend to be a little coarser. They show the corrupt nature of humanity as a physical example. So if the guy's actually truly noble, he could potentially come back as one of the undead that doesn't decay. So
interesting.
So that's why you play a really good person in Ravenloft, is so that way, if the corpse comes back, at least you don't look ugly. Hooray!
Very good. Well, I guess I've been Josh Trelevin.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.
And send us money.